Can't Escape the Magic by Artfax. Chapter 3. Fatima enjoyed the pitter-patter of nervous feet as his slaves darted about trying to fill his every whim. The bright glitter from their collars awoke a smug pleasure in the man. The own pale, revealed skin of his throat delighted him even more as he watched these subhumans cater to his desires with the thick metal rings encircling their own easily wrung necks. Fatima gazed happily at his reflection. Pale skin, shining hair, and strong, dazzling eyes. He used thick lotions to soften his hands from their former rough state. Only the highest quality fabrics would deign to touch his flesh, and only the sweetest wine would be permitted to pass his perfect lips. I am marvelous, he thought. He watched his house slaves tidy up his chambers. From his mirror, he saw how their eyes couldn't help but dart and gaze at his beauty. He saw their hands tremble as they beheld his magnificence, as worshippers might tremble before their god. He truly was the finest being alive, all that he strove to be since he first heard of her fall from grace. He once believed that she was the most perfect being alive. He worked himself tirelessly to please her. To have her glance happily in his direction would have made him grin for days. But she cast him aside. She made the mistake of sending him away, of replacing him with that traitor. She abandoned him and collapsed from perfection. She entrusted that hateful girl with his position and lost all that she had created. She had once been Fatima's god, but she had allowed a demon of a man to stab her in the back. Fatima was not so foolish as she was. He was stronger and wiser. He knew the hearts of his slaves because in his own hateful past, he was one of them. He understood just how far he could push until they broke, and he knew how beautiful they could be when they shattered beyond repair, right before he reformed them to his own purpose. And speaking of shattering, he had a new little project cooling downstairs, didn't he? Oh, the glee he felt when he had first laid eyes on the little kitten. With those wide green eyes alone, he would have made a fine slave, fitting to sell to a pampered noble with those tastes. But Fatima wouldn't do that now. No, the instant he saw that nest of hair, the same shade as that demon that destroyed his god, his lady, his mother. No, the demon's spawn will not be sold to the highest bidder. It would be poetic justice to have the purple pet right by his side. No, at his feet, where all pets deserve to be. Part of Fatima wished he could show the beast that set his world aflame just what would become of his creation, but he would have to settle for enjoying the revenge passively. Being so incredible as him wasn't so foolish as to spit right at a king, even a demonic one. Harry was surprised when he awoke from his freezing slumber. He truly thought he was going to die. But now he was bundled in a soft blanket in front of a roaring fire. Warmth sank into his bones and curled contentedly around his center. Fatima was sitting nearby, sipping from a golden goblet. The chair he was sitting in surrounded him like a throne, with its plush red covering and bright golden edges. The light of the fire made his hair shine and his red lips shimmer. He looked like a king or a god. Cinna blinked and realized what was happening. This is some form of torture brainwashing. He purposefully put himself there so he'd look good. To a slave who just shivered halfway to hell, waking up warm and cozy would leave them vulnerable to something like hero worship. I read about this in one of Dudley's old war practices book, and Petunia threw out. She thought it was too disturbing. The boys stared at the slave master and almost snorted at the covert, expectant gleam in his eyes. He is expecting a sheltered little boy, easy to break and easier to mold, but I'm not a sheltered child. I'm Harry Potter. I'm a soldier of Dumbledore's army, a member of the Order of the Phoenix, and the boy who freaking lived! Oh, how he hated that title in his past life, but now he clung to it. He had allowed himself to forget, to slide into the easy existence of Cinna the War Son, to be lax in his own life. He should have taken Gwynmere's attempts to sell him more seriously, but he let himself assume his mother would always be there to protect him. Now she was gone, and he must defend himself. Luckily, Fatima didn't realize who he was dealing with. Perhaps he could convince him he was broken. If he was treated like any other slave, his chances of escaping were much better than if he was in punishment. Cinna took a breath and allowed that deeply sheltered Slytherin part of himself to creep forward to manipulate Fatima. Master Fatima? He let his voice be hoarse and quiet in an attempt to get a rise of pity from the narrow-eyed man. Yes, little one. Fatima's voice was smooth, and he leaned in close, his breath smelling of fine wine. I don't want to be cold anymore. Can I be your slave now? I want to be your slave now. Cinna let a small flinch escape after his question, subtly showing Fatima that he remembered that slaves do not ask questions. You want to serve me? Or do you just not want to be cold? Fatima's red smile widened. Cinna realized that Fatima was testing him, baiting him. He wanted to throw Cinna back into that awful cell. Shit! Cinna hated that vindictive gleam in the man's eyes. He hates me. Cinna recalled what Fatima said about his father and inwardly winced. Probably because of who he was. It's like Snape and Uncle Vernon rolled into one. How am I going to deal with this? Cinna felt his stomach clench in fear, but the reincarnated wizard steeled himself, gave Fatima's challenge the best he had. I'm not sure I understand, Master Fatima. I really don't want to be cold again, but if I serve you, you'll keep me warm. Right? Cinna used a trick that the girls at the brothel used to catch coin-stingy customers. He ducked his head down and glanced up at the man through his dark, thick lashes. Fatima stared deep into the large green eyes of the small boy before him. The room was quiet as the firelight flickered over the two males. Then Cinna had to duck out of the way as Fatima's cup came flying at him, wine splashed all over him. Master Fatima? Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut your mouth, you little beast! Fatima wrapped his fingers tightly in Cinna's hair. His long nails scraped bloody gouges into his scalp, and strands of violet were yanked out by the root. Cinna was dragged out from the warm blankets as Fatima jerked his head around. You're just like him, just as conceited as he was. I'll fix you, you little bastard! Fatima's voice pitched and cracked with fury. Cinna instinctively reached for his head, trying to ease the agonizing pain. Fatima managed to catch one of his flailing limbs. I was going to be kind to you. I was going to be easy on you. But you tried to lie to me. You tried to deceive me. The one who saved you from a life in a brothel. The one who welcomed you into my service despite your whore mother and demon father. I'll fix you, you little cur. You little devil. Fatima's eyes glowed with hellfire. He looked to be the demon he shrieked Cinna was. His eyes flitted around the room, looking for a weapon to punish the child with. His eyes caught the flicker of the fire. For 1 second that man was still. Then he fell in front of the hearth with a malevolent cackle. His large hand tugged at Cinna next to him. Cinna quickly realized his plan. No, Master Fatima, please, stop it, please! But his pleas were for naught. Fatima pulled Cinna's hand in front of him, and despite the frantic struggles of the 4-year-old boy, he pressed his hand onto the burning coals at the very front of the fire grate. The blue-eyed slave outside the room flinched as the most blood-curdling cry he ever heard erupted from inside.